Well, the book is about, I think it's going to be about this big, and it's got a really good cover. There's a boy with wings on the cover, and the book is called The Boy with Wings. It's about a boy called Tundi Wilkinson, who's about 12 years old, and he looks a bit like me. He's got a slightly longer nose, and his hair is much curlier than mine. And he's been adopted, and he's growing up just outside of a big town with his mum and dad, Ron and Ruth. And they're great. His mum and dad are scientists. They work at a big place called The Facility up the road. And he goes to school where he's being bullied. And so far, so normal, you know. He's a kid that looks different, so he gets bullied. But he has a strange relationship with all things with wings, birds. Birds somehow communicate with him, and he can communicate with them when he's very emotional. And that sets things off for an amazing story about a boy who eventually gets wings of his own. And I wanted to write a story like this because I love sci-fi and fantasy. I've always loved books where magical things happen. And in this book, there's all kinds of weird magical stuff going on. And I've never seen kids that look like me have adventures like this. So Tundi gets to be a hero in all the best ways. So in many respects, it's like a superhero origin story. As I keep saying, I've always wanted to have stories like Narnia, like Lord of the Rings, like Jennings, where you see a more diverse group of characters, more black and brown and whatever characters, because I think it's important now. The world is a much bigger place now, and kids expect to see themselves in stories, not just in the back of a crowd, but centre stage. And so I think it's important to try and do stories like that in my own particular way. I love comics. I've always read comic books since I was a kid. X-Men, Spider-Man, Superman, Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, Judge Dredd. I've always read comics. Roy of the Rovers. And so when it came the time to do my own story for young people, I thought there should be a graphic novel bit in this so that the kids who like graphic novels can go, there's a comic at the end of the book. So you have to wait till the end. Don't skip, because it's a continuation of the story. You can't just read it randomly. But I wanted to, I think the illustrations are gorgeous in the book, and I just wanted to give you a sense of what it would be like if it was a comic. Well, I'm an adult, and I read comics, so I think reading graphic novels and comics when I was a kid helped my reading, actually. I think we can read anything. If you talk to Neil Gaiman or Alan Moore or any of the people who create comics, they'll say that they read everything when they were kids. Everything was up for grabs, and they read it. And as a result, they were really good readers as they got older. Comics help you to read. Plus, there's illustrations. Hooray. Why wouldn't you have a book where there's great illustrations? Look at Charles Dickens, look at Enid Blyton. These books always have a suggestion of what the scene is in the book. So to me, having a bit of a graphic novel in a book is a continuation of that. Just a bit longer. I loved anything to do with Marvel comics. So The Mighty Thor, Spider-Man, The Fantastic Four. But I did read books too. I read Just William, all the Just William books, Jennings. Lots of books about kids at school having terrible problems and being bullied and overcoming them. I used to love those stories because I was a kid that was being bullied at school too. So any story where there was a little kid that was overcoming that, I loved that. I love The Famous Five and The Secret Seven and The Terrible Two and The Lonely One. I don't know if that was a book. But books that were long, I read a lot of Dickens when I was a kid. I remember when I was about 8 or 9, I may have scanned the books, but I tried to read all the Charles Dickens books because they got my imagination going. Also The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Alice in Wonderland, anything with a kind of fantasy bent to it. I loved that. I love magical worlds and wizards and warlocks and kids suddenly discovering that they've got powers or finding a magical book or something. So that's why I want to write the books I want to write, actually. If I could find a way to combine that kind of adventure fantasy story with kids that look like me, that would be a great thing to do. All of the books I read as a child led to what I'm doing today. All the comics, Spider-Man, I fight crime dressed in a spider pajamas, the Fantastic Four, I am one of 4 people who've been into space and have come back with superpowers, the Mighty Thor, I am a Norse god. Everything I've read has led to this day. And also has influenced me. Everything I used to watch on television, which was about kids, and I used to love secret agents. I used to love James Bond and spies and cops, and every adventure I had on the street in my imagination or on the park had me going, dun, 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 this way, everybody, follow me. That was my life. So anything to do with adventures, anything to do with secret agents or superpowers, those are things I really loved. And also stories about school. There's a reason why Harry Potter's so popular. It's about school. So, these things are going to influence you and are going to make you want to emulate those books. So, of course, everything I've read has made me want to emulate that. I want to write books like the books I read when I was a kid. I just want to see more of people like me in them. I think it's important for kids from all backgrounds, all colours, all creeds to see themselves in books, because if you can't see it, you can't be it. It's very difficult to imagine yourself as one of the famous 5 if there are no black kids in the famous 5 or no Asian kids. It's very difficult to see yourself as a hero of a story if you're presented as the butt of a joke. There comes a time when, if you're from an underrepresented group in a book, where you are in the spotlight. And the time is now. There are so many great authors and writers and illustrators now creating books for children of colour, children who are, smart, children with disabilities. There are so many books being written for kids like this that I think that we are reaching a stage where there's a turnaround. At last the publishers are listening and going, actually, why wouldn't you have these books? Why wouldn't we make a story about a child prodigy or a kid with one arm, or a black kid who's just arrived in the country or whatever? People want to read these things because you can't know someone's life unless you've walked in their shoes. And what books did for me was they allowed me to walk in the shoes of Billy Bunter, of the Pevensey children, of the famous 5. They allowed me to be a kid and drink ginger beer and have adventures. And if you don't see yourself on the cover of that book, you kind of wonder if adventures are for you. And actually, adventures are for everyone, okay? If you're a kid watching this, adventures are for all of us. There are books coming out now where there are children that look like me in those books. And so I probably would have enjoyed that. But, I love all kinds of books. So, and I read a lot. So there aren't very many that I haven't read. So, I read a lot when I was a kid. And I didn't care. What's great about kids is they just go, oh, I'll read that. And so you read everything. Hungry Caterpillar, Narnia books, Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Jennings, Just William. You read everything because you want to read everything. If you love books, you'll read any book. And you just get a bit tired of not seeing yourself. And that's the problem. But now there are so many brilliant books. It's great. What do I hope they'll get out of it? I hope they'll enjoy it. I hope they'll think it's funny. Try to put some funny stuff in there. I hope they'll see themselves in the book. Tundi is an underdog at the beginning of the book. He's bullied. He gets picked on because of the way he looks and because of his nose and because of his hair and colour of his skin. But he overcomes that, and he doesn't punch anybody out. His parents teach him about people that look like him who did something important in the world. So he learns about the black women who were the mathematicians who helped rockets get into space, the guy who invented traffic lights, Muhammad Ali, who won the heavyweight championship 3 times in a row as a boxer. Tundi learns all of these things because he's Martin Luther King, who marched and braved the police with hoses and vicious dogs to get people the vote and to kind of get freedom for people in the South in America. So Tundi learns all these things, and it's just hopefully by absorbing these things, kids will go, actually, there are some people who didn't stand up who didn't just stand by and let racism happen. They stood up for something. And Tundi, by the end of the book, has to stand up for the entire earth. So it's a kid who gets to make decisions based on things he's learnt from books and from his parents. And so I think there was a comedian called Richard Pryor who used to do an old man called Mudbone who said, you don't get to be old being no fool. And I think old people have got a lot of wisdom to pass on, and kids need to know that. So his parents, Ron and Ruth, have lots of wisdom, and they try and pass it on to Tundi, as well as jokes. Tundi's dad loves telling jokes to him, and so Tundi doesn't quite get why the jokes are funny. But, there are many things you can learn from adults. And I think Tundi learns that there are things you should respect your parents for, but sometimes you have to break the rules. In a good way, not in a bad way. Keenan Farrell is an extraordinary children's illustrator. He gets such a sense of fun, and with a few pencil strokes, real proper character coming to life. And it's lovely to see some of the adventures, the kids walking on their hands, and the wings when they first appear, and the football match, and to see these things brought to life by the illustrations is joyful. So that's great. And the hero aspect of the characters, as portrayed by Mark Buckingham, who is a DC and Marvel comics artist, I'm very honoured and privileged to have Mark contribute to the book. Anything, I think, where there can be a graphic representation of the characters is a bonus. So when you see Mark's illustrations of what happens at the end of the story, after the end of the story, it's going to blow your mind, I think. It's very exciting. So I will always, even when I wrote my memoir, which is called Who Am I Again? It's available now on sale. But I had comics in that. I had a graphic novel aspect in that, because I just wanted to know that there's more than one way to tell a story. The graphic novel aspect is an interesting and another rabbit hole to go down that opens your mind. Oh, you can tell a story like this, and I want that in my books always. Thank you, Book Trust. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy The Boy with Wings. Happy reading. Hooray!